matters relating to comprehensive disaster management. Preparedness starts with planning. All organizations, whether it's government, private business, or household, is required to plan at some point in time for development, for emergencies, and to build resilience. At the DDME, we encourage the wider public to take a multi-hazard approach when preparing your plans. And you would often hear us say disaster management is everyone's business because we all have a part to play. For this reason, I ventured to the Turks and Caicos Department of Planning to get a better insight on the role of the planning department and the importance of building codes. Joining me on the show today is Mr. Toriano Williams, Acting Deputy Director from the Department of Planning, and Mr. Eugene Williams, Development Control Engineer, also from the Department of Planning. Thank you for joining me on the show today and welcome to Disaster 365.
Thank you and thanks for having us on this very important show to educate, inform, and the general public as it relates to our role in partnership with disaster management, which we all know that is vital, and disaster management is everybody's business. And we would be happy to bring insight and educate and sensitize the general public as it relates to the Department of Planning and physical role as it relates to land use management, and also pertaining to the building codes, development manual, and the physical planning ordinance. I'm also grateful at this time to have development control engineer, Mr. Williams, who's also here and present with us today. Mr. Williams?
Good morning, Turks and Caicos, and I want to give thanks to DDME for having us here today. As Mr. Williams indicated, we'll be here to try to enlighten you more, guide you as we move forward and making Turks and Caicos stronger and resilient with this hurricane season. Thank you.
All right. To jumpstart the conversation, what is the overall role of the planning department?
The role of the Department of Planning is the responsibility of all development that's on, development that's above, or under the earth. Persons would have to come and seek development permission from the Department of Planning. I think it's very vital to stress the importance of development permission, because persons throughout the island sometime would have actually come and indicated that they are not aware that they need to seek development permission for various types of development projects. But it's very important. I mean, you would first have to seek the guidance from a licensed architect, engineer, licensed who has a valid business license in Turks and Caicos Islands. And we could provide you with that list of persons where they would be your first focal point in terms of persons you engage in order to seek the necessary clearance that would be required for development permission.
Okay, so just to give the public a better perspective, how does planning or the role of the planning department truly fit into disaster risk reduction?
Well, I mean, it's very vital, because from past experiences, and we would revert back to Hurricane Ike and the various different hurricanes just to show how disaster management and planning department plays a very important role in terms of working together and partnerships. I'll go as far as indicating that the disaster management department has a member that's a part of the physical planning board that has the utmost of authority of approving all development projects in Turks and Caicos. So that in itself will speak volume in terms of the partnership between the two departments. Now, as it relates to speaking about development and how resilient and what the Department of Planning role is, I would echo in my opinion and from the voice of my team that it's very important. We would see from Hurricane Ike and the various different hurricanes that would hit Turks and Caicos, one of the first things that we will do is do an overall assessment of the actual structures itself, the integrity of the structures, and see whereby if there's any deficiencies from the code, and where in previous years or examples where there were deficiencies, the team would go and then make amendments to mainly the building code, the development manual, or whatever document that deals with the integrity of the structures. We would do such and make those different various amendments. But I mean, if you look at building code currently today, it's a very good document.
Thank you for that, Mr. Williams. As we have a solid building code, which goes through the necessary life cycle of improvements, What would you say is one of the challenges that the department is faced with as it relates to the building code?
But I think one of the main issues that we would find persons sometimes not building according to the approved plans, which pretty much we would say are very sustainable and has strength as relates to structural integrity. So that would be one of the issues we would have. Where we would define deficiencies within the code, we would go back then and make the necessary adjustments to ensure that Turks is resilient in its building system, in its building methods, in its building methodology. Now, one of the other things I would say is the fact that we believe, and it has been proven over the years, that the traditional method of construction, which is the concrete method, is one that we are more favorable to and has proven over the years to be a very good system. So I think that in itself as well, and I think Mr. Williams probably could speak more to the elements that makes up the traditional build system.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Toriano. As we hand over to Mr. Eugene, share with us how the Department of Planning can assist the general public in disaster risk reduction. Just kindly expound on that some more.
Yes. For example, the Department of Planning, we have engineers and officers here, and we have the 8 steps request form that the general public or anyone that needs, if you're uncertain of any construction or any part of your construction, you feel free to come in. It's free. You just sign it and ask for the request, and we will go out and check these stages. The 8 stages are when you're setting out your foundation, go to floor slabs, your rough plumbing and electrical, walls, column, beams, roof structure, and completion. And even special inspections. As I said, if you're unsure of anything, we can go out there and check it out for you. Like Mr. Williams said, our issue here in the islands, we have a lot of contractors that are taking shortcuts. And a lot of these shortcuts we find, like when we go out there after hurricanes, we go in to investigate, to see which structures, why they fail. You'll see, for example, let's say a rafter. You'll see that they only put 2 nails, or instead of properly putting maybe 6 or 8 nails, whatever, depending on the size, to reinforce the structure. And hence, that's the reason why you'll see a lot of roofs flying off. They didn't, perhaps maybe to save some money or whatever, they cheat the client out and you have a disaster in the making. But again, for the general public, you can come in, request for us to go out there, because if we pick it up beforehand, we can help you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. As we talked about the Department of Planning being that development permission authority, does TCI have a sustainable development plan?
I mean, that in itself is a very good question, and I mean, I'm a proud member of the team as it relates to this matter. I mean, what I can say to you is that the Turks and Caicos Islands had a development plan, a valid development plan in 1987, and that plan was for a period of 1 year. So the plan itself, the period had expired. However, that plan was used as a guide in terms of the National Physical Development Plan document itself. And from that document, you had a zoning plan for each one of the islands within the Turks and Caicos Islands. So that then would go into detail to categorize the different types of development activity as it relates to residential, commercial, tourism-related development, hotel, apartments, categorized in that zoning plan. However, today, we are pleased and happy to be able to inform the general public that the department has a development plan that's ongoing at this time. And I mean, I think this conversation is so timely, where I can advise persons that in the forthcoming future, you're going to be seeing a number of different public consultations. Due to the fact that we are faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, you would have a number of different virtual public consultation meetings where persons would be given the opportunity to be a part of the process. And development itself is all about people. It's an engagement about not only the Department of Planning and the technocrats, but it's about the entire Turks and Caicos Islands at large. So they would be given an opportunity to come and be a part of the shaping of how we foresee Turks and Caicos Islands in the upcoming future. The plan will speak for a 10-year plan that gets shaping in terms of where, when, and how development takes place. And then it would give the department an opportunity to now, once a developer would have come to the islands, or anyone, and wants to develop within the Turks and Caicos Islands, it's now not a reactive standpoint,
but a proactive.
We have an active live website. The website is planning.gov.tc. You will be seeing our Facebook page. I'm happy about that. Will be rolling out shortly throughout the course of this week, where persons will be more in touch with the department. The department will be then able to actually update the general public better, and it'll be a better communication with the public in terms of updating them of the day-to-day activities. I can go further to indicate that the group out of Fort Lauderdale, the ATSA group, are the consultants who are responsible for formulating the development plan with the guidance of the Department of Planning and the general public at large. So you would see that. So to go back to it, to answer the question that you asked, the Department of Planning has a development plan that the period is currently expired from 1987. It was a 1-year period. However, we are currently in the process now, and we are happy to say that the plan has reached to a phase 2 of the National Physical Development Plan, and the public will be consulted now. Welcome to go out and pretty much give their thoughts. And there's a survey that's on the website now for persons to take, and the website is planning.gov.tc.
The development plan for Turks and Caicos, has it been adjusted, or through the consultation, would there be adjustments taken into consideration the environmental changes such as climate change, or the intensity and frequency of hazards such as hurricanes and storm surge?
Yes. Pretty much in terms of the development plans, it deals with the introduction or the proposals of development projects. And we would definitely take into consideration all of the very important things in terms of one of the main core responsibilities of the Department of Planning, going back to the Constitution, is taking into consideration the environmental impact that a development proposal would have on the land-based environment, the natural environment. So these are things that we will take into consideration. We will take flood zones. We'll look at sustainable drainage systems, and we'll look at how we can introduce all of these things. However, we will be able to speak more detail to it from the plan, from the experts, and the plan don't only speak generally from a planning department standpoint. It deals with all of your essential agencies who have already been engaged. Very key stakeholders, including the Turks and Caicos Hotel Association, where members would fly in from Fort Lauderdale. The ETA team would have done a number of different meetings, consultations. Your department, disaster management, the ECR, traffic department, where you would have a number of different issues pertaining to traffic within Turks and Caicos. And I know persons will be more than happy to understand that we have a plan that will speak volume to traffic, and having a traffic count and traffic peak times, and what do we do from a department standpoint, working along with traffic department, who was very vital being a part of the plan. It's not completed. The plan is expected to be completed in October, but all of these things we take into considerations. And I would add by saying that one of the final steps in majority of the major development proposals, we deal with environmental impact assessments. We speak directly to the environment, the economics, the social, and all of the various different impacts from our development, and how do you mitigate against these development proposals.
All right. So what I love that you're explaining there is that it takes a community to develop that plan. So it's not just a one perspective. You mentioned a number of departments that are integrated. It's a multi-stakeholder consultation, and we want the public to tune in and put in your inputs and your views. This is the opportunity to do so. You mentioned land use planning. Briefly explain, just for public information, what is land use planning?
Well, land use planning is how you would use a space and taking that space and being able to plan on that space as relates to tangible development on the ground. So the land use planning within the planning department and throughout the world has a responsibility to shaping a community, shaping a space, and shaping it in the most sustainable manner. It dictates where, when, and how development actually takes place. It's very vital to, the development of a country because it plays a very vital role in how the development is shaping and how it shapes spaces.
Does the department have a proposed land use planning module to guide the type of development throughout TCI? For example, to prevent persons from building in flood-prone areas, or to guide the different types of structures that will be suitable for various types of land?
The department has land use zoning maps that guide the type of development that you would indicate it in terms of which, in our opinion, would be suitable for the various types of locations and where we foreseen development happens. Yes. And I think it goes back because it has a very sensitive legal aspect of it. The plan period would have expired. However, the plan is currently also used as a guide. Okay. And not only as a guide, I like to explain further as it relates to this, because I think our previous directors of planning, our previous persons who would have held the various seats, and importantly, our director, who pretty much has years of experience in the department, we would have said that the Department of Planning don't have a current or active or valid National Physical Development Plan since 1987. But when you look around toward the Turks and Caicos Islands in terms of all of the tangible, sustainable development on the ground, and also different challenges, that will be those proposals and those developments would have been by the guidance of the same department in collaboration with the essential stakeholders and persons, because it's a process. Yeah. And I would give an example of a development proposal because it will shows the various different type of key stakeholders that plays a part, and also the general public. For instance, if someone was to come and provide a development proposal for a hotel, once the department would have actually received the actual development application, one of the first things that happens is we would advise the applicant or the agent, based on the regulations, that the development proposal needs to be advertised. Okay. One would ask, what is advertisement? And advertisement is basically bringing the public aware of the development proposal being located in a particular location. Okay. So you would advertise on the site by a notice indicating that the type of development, the size, the height. You'll inform persons within 200 feet of the property boundaries. You would put it in the Gazette. You would put it in the newspaper. You then, based on that development proposal, will have to carry out an environmental impact assessment. That assessment then will speak to the different volume of that development, or positive or negative impact that development would have on the natural land base. Okay. It then further speaks and say, all right, can this development happen, or it cannot happen? And if it can happen, how do we mitigate? How do we say to an applicant or an agent or a developer, no, you cannot build in this particular location because it's a flood zone area. Yeah. And so then it speaks also to building systems. So we show how it's critical and how we work hand in hand with disaster management. We would take that development proposal and forward to your agency, and you would give us input as well. So in the event, we would have to oversee that location being low-lying area. I'm quite sure yourself or Mr. Clavo, Mike, will be able to pull that up and say, no, based on my review, I think this location where you're proposing development, maybe you should take the development and push it back maybe some 50 feet.
Yeah.
So it's those type of things that we deal with. And I think based on the existing laws and the tools and the ordinance and the development manual is something that you would currently keep under review and currently update.
So it's really a living document. And based on what you said, it's truly a multi-stakeholder process and integrating all your social, economic aspects into planning. For the public perspective, we constantly start preparedness and planning with knowing your risk. So I heard you mention all these various assessments. You go and you do that question, that survey, you consult, and then you come up with a mitigative plan on how we're going to reduce our risk. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on Disaster 365. Join us next week, Wednesday, as we continue our conversation with the Department of Planning. Remember to visit their website at planning.gov.tc. I'm your host, Joanna Wilson, signing off until next week, Wednesday. Stay safe and be prepared.